I'm John Robison. I'm here this afternoon in the Bentley shop. Got three SZ cars from the 90s and one stray ESO Revolta. And over here, we've got an interesting car. This is a 1963 Bentley S3, but not a regular S3. It is one of the rarer and more desirable Flying Spurs. And this car belongs to Steve Serio at Bond Group, and he's actually engaged us to make this car handle like it did when it was new as part of his personal collection, and that's what we've set out to do. So because it's a Flying Spur, it really deserves a good quality of work, and unfortunately these cars, a lot of them, just weren't treated all that well in the last 50 years because they weren't special until fairly recently. This car came into us with the brakes in a state of failure, the steering in a state of failure, the suspension sagging, and we're bringing all that back. So underneath these brake drums, there was one working cylinder in two of the wheels and no working cylinders in the other two. The linkage to operate the brakes runs under the car. Let's just see how the brakes work in one of these cars. You see this rod here? This rod is a mechanically operated rear brake, and this pulls the shoes out into position, and then you've got hydraulic lines here and brake hoses. That's the hydraulic set of brakes. So the car has some braking ability on hydraulics and some braking ability on mechanical, and you get the full power on both. Rolls-Royce used that odd system because they believed that mechanical and hydraulic were separate systems for safety. I don't know that modern engineers feel that way, but that's what they felt in the 50s when this was designed. So you can see here, the operating rod runs up to this lever assembly. And here we've got stacked one above the other, two master cylinders. And there is a pivot that I'm looking at right here. This pivot arm has rods here that go up to a servo there on the back of the transmission. That servo is pushed and engaged by the downward motion on the brake pedal, which also has a backup link that pulls these rods to operate the master cylinders. And they, in turn, at the other end of this balance beam, pull the rod to the rear wheels. So a really, really complicated thing. And a lot of times we see these cars come into us and none of this stuff works because no one understands it. In this car, it was particularly troublesome because a lot of this stuff didn't work because it was all bent. The beam here was bent and jammed. This arm here that my finger is on, that's for the parking brake. And that was bent off to the side and jammed. You can see where some of these lines and pipes have been straightened. This is all supposed to be protected by a shield, which you see here. But when we got this car, it didn't have a shield. All the stuff was torn up. So probably it ran something over, and that ripped the shield off, tore all this up, and nobody really ever knew how to make it right after that. So in any case, what you see here now is hours and hours of time rebuilding all of these components. And once they were rebuilt, little John here had to shape all of these brackets and pieces and all the pipes, make everything fit. So it was a tremendous project, but the payoff is that the car now will lock the brakes when you stand on them. It'll stop, which you don't see that often in these cars because so few of them have working brakes. I actually often hear people say about this era of Rolls-Royce or Bentley that you need to give yourself a lot of extra distance to stop because they're not so quick to stop. But When the brakes are rebuilt, like in this car, they'll stop like any other car. Up here in front, we had some more damage. This shield here protects the horns and deflects the sound down. But when we got the car, the horns were just here exposed. A couple extra horns had been mounted into these two hole sets here. And all of that was broken up. So we sourced an original horn baffle, and we got the correct original horns in there. We brought that back to life. Then he went into the rest of the front end. So you can see here the shocks, which are also upper control arms in this series of car. Those are pulled and rebuilt. The brake hoses are redone, some line fittings. You can see the chassis and frame grounds are done there. The backing plates in this car had been damaged at some point in the past. They didn't match, so you can see we now have newly redone backing plates on both sides, and they match once again. All the inner springs and levers are matched in the car. The rest of it is tight. You see your sway bar bushings are tight here. Now we're starting to see a little bit of deterioration in these bushings here, but those still have some years of life left in them. All the main carrying parts are new. You can see we have new front springs in place here. As we move back towards the back of the vehicle, same thing. We've got rebuilt shocks in here now, redone the hoses and lines. All the inner components and the drums are renewed. These bushings here that couple the shock levers up to the rear axle arms, those are all renewed. The bushings here in this linkage are renewed, and this is all straight. So the result of all of this is we have something that's able now to stop and steer at the level that Bentley designed. So the last remaining bit is the tires. Actually, here's one other thing. When this car came to us, you see this bent tie rod? That's another indication that it sustained a pretty solid whack sometime long ago, because there's the new tie rod, and it's straight as an arrow, as you can see. And you can also see here these new bushings where all of the ball and socket joints in the steering have now been rebuilt. So to carry this car, we've fitted the modern version of the original supercar tire. That's a Centenato CN72 from Pirelli. These tires are sized in the old sizing. They're 205 VR15s. And these tires are about 3/4 of an inch shorter than the bias ply tire that was originally fitted to these cars. And the reason for that is that was the largest radial tire casing that Michelin and Pirelli, working side by side essentially, could engineer for these cars. So this became the standard diameter that actually was used on these vehicles right up through the 1990s. But when you see these tires fitted on a car that was originally designed for bias tires, you see the wheels look a little bit smaller, and people wonder if that's correct, and it absolutely was, because these tires were the hot ticket on any large high-performance car in the mid-1960s. These tires came out just a year after this car went on sale, and you could be sure anyone who bought a car at this level was riding on them. So in our next video on this car, I will show what we've done up under the hood and on top, and we'll show this car taking a ride. But for now, you've seen what it all looks like from underneath, and this is how these cars ought to be cared for. We take a lot of pride in doing good work on these cars at Robison Service, and I like to think it shows in stuff like this.